LeBron James does not have to go home, but he needs to get the hell out of Los Angeles. Those were his exact words, not whispered in private, not hinted at in some carefully worded statement. Byron Scott, a man who played for the Lakers, who coached the Lakers, who understands what that franchise is supposed to stand for, looked into the camera and said it is time for LeBron to leave. Shannon is not just any media personality. He is someone who has built his entire brand in recent years around defending LeBron James at every turn, in every situation, no matter what the facts are and no matter how the conversation is going. If LeBron does something good, Shannon is the first one celebrating. If someone criticizes LeBron, Shannon is the first one pushing back. That has been the pattern for a long time now. So when Byron Scott made his comments and someone brought that clip to Shannon on air, what happened next was exactly what you would expect. Shannon got emotional. He started throwing out talking points. He started bringing up the Lakers' valuation and Anthony Davis and everything except the actual point Byron Scott was making. And that is exactly what we are going to break down today. Because Shannon's response to Byron Scott was a perfect example of how LeBron's biggest...
He was talking about basketball, and Shannon immediately ran away from that conversation. The Anthony Davis argument and what it actually proves. Shannon also leaned hard on the Anthony Davis argument. He said the Lakers never would have gotten Anthony Davis without LeBron being there. And again, taken purely on its own, that statement might be technically accurate. LeBron's presence likely did make Los Angeles more attractive to Davis at that time. Fine, accepted. But here's what Shannon completely ignores when he makes that argument. The trade that brought Anthony Davis to the Lakers cost the franchise an enormous amount. They gave up young players, they gave up future draft picks, they traded away pieces of what could have been a long-term foundation to bring in Anthony Davis, largely because LeBron wanted a co-star capable of helping him compete for a championship right now in the short term. That was the calculation, and it made sense at the time because LeBron was in his prime and the window was open. But that window did not stay open forever. The championship they won in the bubble in 2020 happened under completely unusual circumstances in a completely unusual year. After that, things started falling apart. Injuries piled up, the roster construction became a problem. The team started aging in the wrong direction, and now here they are with LeBron at 41 years old, still taking up enormous cap space, still demanding a role at the center of everything, and the franchise is left trying to figure out how to move forward while working around all the limitations that came with those earlier decisions. So yes, Shannon, Anthony Davis came to LA partly because of LeBron. But the same LeBron-centered decision-making also cost the franchise significant long-term assets and put them in a position where rebuilding is now extremely complicated. That is the full picture. Shannon only wants to show you half of it. What Byron Scott was really saying about the present. Let us get back to the core of what Byron Scott was actually pointing out, because this is the part that matters most and the part that Shannon never addressed. LeBron James is 41 years old. He is still playing professional basketball at 41, which is remarkable in terms of longevity and physical maintenance. Nobody can take that away from him. But remarkable longevity is not the same thing as being good for a team right now in the current moment. And the question Byron Scott was raising is a simple and fair one. Is
that you played hard every night. That you held yourself to a standard that went beyond just showing up, that you competed with your full effort even when things were not going your way, that you took accountability when things went wrong and fixed it instead of finding someone else to blame. That is what previous Laker greats stood for. And when Byron Scott and others from that generation speak up about what is happening now, they are not speaking from jealousy or bitterness. They are speaking from a place of genuine care for what the franchise is supposed to represent. They built that legacy. They know what it cost. And watching it not be honored is not something they can just sit quietly and accept. Shannon's jealousy argument and why it falls apart.
At some point in Shannon's response, he went in a direction that a lot of LeBron defenders go to when they run out of better arguments. He started talking about how older players in previous eras had fewer benefits than players today, and suggested that the criticism aimed at LeBron is rooted in jealousy because LeBron makes more money and has more advantages than those older players had. This argument does not hold up for even a second when you look at it honestly. Nobody who is criticizing LeBron James is upset that he makes a lot of money. Nobody who points out LeBron's load management or his lack of accountability is doing so because they resent his paycheck. The criticism exists because of behavior, because of what happens on the court and in the locker room, because of the gap between what LeBron claims to be and what people who watch closely actually see. In fact, if you think about it carefully, LeBron having more money, more resources, better medical care, better nutrition, better recovery technology than any previous generation of players actually makes some of the criticisms of him more pointed, not less. If you have all of those advantages, if you have every possible tool available to you that previous generations could only dream about, and you still choose to load manage your way through the season, and you still choose to take yourself out of difficult situations, and you still struggle to produce consistent results, then the advantages you have do not protect you from criticism. They actually make the criticism sharper. Shaq talked about this exact thing. He said he could have played 25 or 30 years with load management. His point was that these modern tools and advantages should be making players better and more available, not giving them more reasons to sit out. What the real Laker fans feel. Here is something worth talking about, because Shannon Sharpe constantly positions himself as someone who understands what LeBron means to the Lakers and to the fans. But if you actually listen to Lakers fans, the real ones who have been watching this franchise for decades, the picture is very different from the one Shannon paints. Many of those fans are exhausted. They watched LeBron come to Los Angeles with enormous fanfare. They gave him the benefit of the doubt. They celebrated the bubble championship. They wanted it to work. But as the years have gone on and the team has continued to underperform, as the roster has been stripped of its youth and its future through trades made to accommodate LeBron's timeline, as the losing has continued, a large portion of the actual fan base has quietly shifted from hopeful to frustrated to something closer to ready to move on. These are not people who hate LeBron. They do not all hate what he accomplished in the first chapter of his time with the Lakers, but they are people who can see.
The response is always to defend, always to deflect, always to find the argument that protects LeBron at all costs. That kind of blind loyalty does not help LeBron. It actually hurts him in the long run because it creates an environment where honest feedback never reaches him, or at least never gets amplified. Instead of someone helping him understand that the situation in Los Angeles has run its course and that a graceful exit might be the best thing for everyone, including himself, he gets surrounded by people who keep insisting that everything is fine and that the critics are all wrong and jealous. The people who actually care about LeBron's overall legacy, who want history to remember him well, would be better served by being honest about what is happening right now instead of pretending that Byron Scott's very reasonable observation is somehow outrageous or disrespectful. What comes next? Here's the thing about where we are in LeBron's career that makes this moment important. LeBron James is approaching the end. That is not a cruel thing to say. It is just reality. Every player's career ends. The greatest players who ever played eventually hang up the jersey, and how you handle that final chapter matters. It affects how people remember you. It affects the story that gets told about your legacy. Michael Jordan left at the top. When he retired for the last time with the Bulls after the 6th championship, the image people were left with was Jordan at the peak of everything, dominating, winning, unstoppable. That is the picture burned into collective memory, and it has served his legacy enormously well in the decades since. LeBron James has the opportunity to leave on his own terms, in a way that preserves what was best about his career, in a way that gives people a positive final memory. But the longer he stays in a situation that is clearly not working, the more that opportunity fades.
Every struggling season, every loss, every moment where he looks less than what he used to be, adds to a picture that is more complicated than the one he deserves to be remembered by. Byron Scott was not trying to hurt LeBron when he made those comments. He was actually, whether people want to accept this or not, pointing towards something that could protect what is left of LeBron's reputation if handled correctly. Leaving Los Angeles, moving to a situation that might be a better fit, or simply stepping away from the game with his head high, those are all better options than grinding through another difficult season in a situation that has stopped working. Closing thoughts. Byron Scott said what he said, and he meant every word of it. He is not going to walk it back. He is not going to apologize for being honest. And honestly, the basketball world is better for having people like him, willing to say the uncomfortable thing out loud when everyone else is dancing around it carefully. Shannon Sharpe got emotional. He brought up valuations and business deals and Anthony Davis and everything except the actual point. He talked about how much LeBron has meant to the franchise commercially. He talked about evolution and generational differences. He talked about everything in the world except whether Byron Scott's basketball observation was accurate. And here is the answer to that question, the one Shannon never gave. Byron Scott's observation was accurate. Not because LeBron is a bad person, not because his career has not had remarkable moments, but because the current situation is not serving the Lakers, it is not serving the younger players on the team, and it is not serving LeBron himself if we are being completely honest about it. The greats who built the Lakers into what it is, Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, Byron Scott himself, these people have every right to speak up about the standards of the franchise they helped create. Their voices should carry weight in this conversation. And the fact that so many of them have, in their own ways and at their own times, expressed frustration with the current direction is not something that can simply be dismissed as jealousy or bitterness or old men not understanding the modern game. It is people who love the franchise and love the game saying clearly and honestly that things need to change. Byron Scott just happened to say it the most directly, and Shannon Sharpe crying over it on air is not a counter-argument. It is just further proof of exactly what Byron Scott was talking about. So let us hear from you. Do you think Byron Scott was right? Do you think it is time for LeBron to move on from the Lakers? Or do you think Shannon Sharpe has a point and LeBron deserves more?